In this chapter, you will see how we can loop through data. That would be useful, of course, if you would like to update multiple elements. Let's take the example in our case where we have done a query against CyberArk identity. All the users were returned. Now I would like to loop one by one over each user because I would like to update a certain attribute for that user. Let's start with cloning the flow that we had already. Let's give it a different name. Loop users and store it in data. Save and open. Okay. I'm going to delete the form and I'm going to add now a condition which will be a loop. So I drag and drop the loop into the flow. And now when I need to start configuring it, of course, what data does it need to loop through? As you can see, you can run through an array of items, or you can just run it a number of times. In my case, I'm going to use the array of items. And what array am I going to loop through? Well, that's the arrays which are exposed in the previous API call. And I need to make a note here. So the previous API call, the results that were returned contained a number of arrays. So if you take a look at that result, so go back to the bell icon, let's look at the details. And now drill down in the results. So received, response, body, result. And you can find a number of arrays here, the columns here. That's one example with the objects. And in the objects, you will find all the details of a user. And there's also an array which is called results, which has in its turn again entities, which is an array. So we will automatically recognize which elements in a call are arrays, and that's what you see exposed here. The columns, the results, and the entities. So I'm going to select here the results because that's what contained my user details. So if I click here on results, then you can see that it's actually understanding what elements are available in that result. For example, the display name. Let me now go to data. Don't worry about data here yet. It's something that we will cover in a later stage. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to store something in our data, which is some kind of a persistent memory, if you like, where you could store things. We'll spend a different chapter on this, on how to work with data, but this is just for the demo purposes. So what I would like to do, I would like to store the information coming from a loop, and I'm going to use for the data name the user display name and as data the user UID. Let's save this workflow and let's run the workflow. Run it. It's running. Completed running. And now let's take a look at the data. If you click on manage, then you will see the content of the data store. And you will find here all the usernames of the users that were returned by the API call. So we went over them one by one and we stored them in the data store.